The world outside was a hard white silence, where every sound seemed muffled beneath a heavy blanket of snow. Snow smothered the fields, erasing all memory of harvest, hiding the scars of ploughs and the stubble of last season's grain beneath its cold shroud. The wind, sharp and merciless, sliced through the cottage walls, stealing warmth with every gust, rattling shutters and making the timbers groan. Inside, the air was thick with a sharp, acrid smell, greasy, unsettling, clinging to everything, seeping into clothes and hair. This was the smell of burning bones, the scent of survival, a constant reminder that wood was scarce and every scrap of fuel precious. The fire in the hearth was no cheerful blaze, but a sullen, pale glow, barely enough to keep the frost at bay. Its fuel, the dried bones of last season's livestock, sheep femurs, brittle and hollow, scavenged from the remains of the autumn slaughter. Cow ribs, pig knuckles, and whatever else could be found, all pressed into service to feed the reluctant flames. The heat was dry and intense, but the flames were small, reluctant, never enough to truly warm the room or chase away the chill. The smoke filled the cramped space, a constant reminder of desperate measures, stinging eyes and throats, settling in every corner. For the peasant family, winter was not picturesque. It was a prison of cold, a daily struggle for life, where each day was measured by how much warmth could be coaxed from the meagre fire. The fire was not for comfort, but a weapon against the encroaching frost, a fragile barrier between survival and the deadly cold outside. Every sensation, the biting cold, the strange odor, the weak flame, testified to the fight for survival, to the ingenuity and endurance demanded by winter's grip. In this world, ingenuity was born from necessity, and every day was a lesson in making do with what little remained. Life for a medieval peasant was a relentless cycle of scarcity where every day was shaped by the struggle to survive. The rhythm of the seasons dictated their fate, and the threat of hunger was never far away. The harvest, divided between the Lord, the Church, and next year's seed, left little for the family. Even after months of back-breaking labor, most peasants saw only a small share of the fruits of their toil. This meager surplus had to last through the long, barren winter. Each day, the family watched their stores dwindle, hoping they would stretch until spring. Every resource was stretched to its limit. Clothes patched, food consumed, nothing wasted. Even the smallest scraps were saved, and every garment was mended again and again. Wood, once plentiful, became scarce as forests shrank and populations grew. The land around villages was stripped bare, forcing people to venture farther for fuel. Gathering fuel meant long, exhausting treks for fallen branches, time stolen from other vital tasks. Children and elders joined in, braving the cold and fatigue. The poorly insulated cottage lost heat as quickly as it was made. Draughts crept through every crack, and warmth was a fleeting luxury. The open hearth was inefficient, warmth vanished up the chimney. Most of the heat escaped, leaving the family huddled close to the fire for what little comfort it gave. As winter deepened, the search for fuel grew desperate and the returns diminished. Each trip yielded less, and the cold pressed in ever tighter. When food and firewood ran low, quiet panic set in. The family gathered in silence, each person feeling the weight of uncertainty. The cold was not just discomfort, it was a mortal enemy. Frost crept across the windows, and every breath hung in the air. Without fuel, the family was defenseless. The hearth, once the heart of the home, became a symbol of their vulnerability. Every day was a battle to keep the cold at bay. Parents did what they could to shield their children, using every trick and scrap to preserve warmth. Survival depended on using every scrap, every trick to make it through the winter. Ingenuity and resilience were as vital as bread or wood, and hope was the one resource they could not afford to lose. The forests were not free for all. They belonged to the king, the lord, or the church. Forest law forbade peasants from cutting living trees. Penalties were severe. Foresters patrolled, watching for illegal woodcutting. Peasants could only gather deadwood, fallen branches, twigs, roots, by hand or crook. In harsh winters, the forest floor was quickly picked clean. The sight of abundant, forbidden fuel just beyond reach bred frustration and resentment. This forced peasants to seek fuel in unlikely places, driving their resourcefulness to the limit. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1322 shattered the fragile balance of medieval life. Relentless rains ruined crops and hay, leading to years of hunger and disease. Grain prices soared, food became unaffordable. People ate seed grain, animals, even leather. Starvation and cannibalism were recorded. The cold compounded the crisis. Fuel was scarce, wood was wet, and people were too weak to gather it. Without fire, they couldn't cook or keep warm. Hypothermia and illness swept through the malnourished population. Up to a quarter of people perished in some regions. The famine showed how food, fuel, and survival were intertwined. A bad winter was a life-or-death struggle. The inability to secure fuel was as deadly as hunger. In desperation, every possible resource was considered. Burning bones became an essential tool for survival. Burning bones for heat was a deliberate, knowledgeable choice. Peasants understood their environment intimately, including the properties of bone. Fresh bones wouldn't burn, but dried, fat-saturated bones could. The real fuel was the fat and marrow within the porous bone structure. After butchering, bones were boiled for broth, then dried for weeks. Charring them in the fire removed remaining organics, leaving a carbon-rich, fat-laden fuel. This bone char burned with a steady, radiant heat. Less flame, more glow. It was ideal for small huts, providing long-lasting warmth. The process turned waste into energy, a forgotten science of survival. Every step was practical, efficient, and born of necessity. The bone fire was a testament to peasant ingenuity. Bonfires were a planned strategy, not a last resort. The process was woven into the seasonal rhythm. Bones set aside at autumn slaughter, prepared for winter. This foresight turned moments of plenty into future security. Collecting and curing bones was as vital as salting meat or storing grain. It was a form of self-sufficiency in a world of restrictions. Peasants managed resources carefully. Wood for cooking, peat for slow burns, bones for radiant heat. Fuel choices were calculated, not random. Knowledge was shared within the community, passed down through generations. The bone fire was a living tradition, a quiet act of resilience. Even in oppression, people found ways to survive with intellect and resourcefulness. Night falls early in a northern winter. The cottage is plunged into gloom. The darkness outside is deep and absolute, broken only by the faintest glimmer from the small windows. Inside, shadows stretch across the rough-hewn walls, and the world feels shrunken to the circle of light cast by the fire. The family huddles close to the pale glow of the bone fire, wrapped in thin blankets. Every movement is slow, conserving precious warmth. The children press against their parents, seeking comfort and heat, while the adults exchange quiet, reassuring glances. The wind shrieks outside, snow sifts through cracks, but the fire is their only defense. Each gust rattles the shutters, and the cold seems to seep through every gap in the ancient wood. A sheep femur glows, giving off a directed, intense warmth. The bone fire is small but fierce, its heat focused and precious, a lifeline in the heart of winter. The air is thick with the sharp, greasy smell of burning bone. Smoke curls upward, clinging to the low ceiling, and the taste of it lingers on every breath. Conversation is sparse, energy is saved, fuel rationed. The mother mends clothes with careful stitches. The father sharpens tools for the coming days, and the children, exhausted, sleep bundled together for warmth and safety. The night is a slow endurance test, each hour a victory against the cold. Time stretches marked only by the crackle of the fire and the shifting of bodies seeking comfort. The fire must be tended carefully. Letting it die would be disastrous. Every ember is precious, and the ritual of feeding the flames is done with quiet reverence. One parent stays awake, shifting bones, listening to the wind and the children's breathing. Their watchful presence is a silent promise that the fire and hope will not be lost to the night. This nightly vigil is a ritual of survival, burning the remnants of last year's harvest until dawn. As the first light creeps in, the family knows they have endured another night, bound together by warmth, resilience, and the fragile glow of the guttering flame. The bonfire is a symbol of human resilience and resourcefulness. In the grand sweep of history, the struggles of peasants are often forgotten. Their survival depended on knowledge, endurance, and the will to endure hardship. The Lord's law locked away the forest, but the cold respected no boundaries. The bonfire was a third way, a quiet defiance against death. It required mental fortitude and a refusal to give up. The story of the bonfire is a testament to the strength of ordinary people. It reminds us that survival is about purposeful action, using every resource and finding warmth in the darkest times.